Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement 2. Package on the desk, that means it's a super mini email call. Let's get right to it. This one looks like it comes from Ridol. It's hard to make out the handwriting, but this is a USPS or US Postal Service flat rate box that is absolutely, completely chocked full. It's really heavy for the size of the box. It feels like it might have bricks or something inside, although probably electronics or maybe books. We do have a letter here that says open first, and yeah, a bunch of other stuff in here, and at least one book there, so that might explain the weight. The name of the viewer that sent us in is Rain. The letter says, hello, I've been a huge fan of your channel for a while now and thought you might want to repurpose some of this old Apple II stuff. I've enclosed a newsletter inside of that Walgreens photo slip. I hope you enjoy this stuff and take good care of it. Thanks, Rain. All right, thank you very much for that. An old newsletter. Okay, yep, we got some floppy disks. Apple II assembly language book. Okay, cool. Oh, it looks like a floppy drive. Ooh, and I have one of these already, and I love these. It's a clone Apple II floppy drive, and it looks like there's another one here. So 2 clone Apple floppy drives, and then, yep, I think a lot of the weight was a bunch of cool books. Let's take a closer look at all of this stuff. Well, let's start by just taking a sneak peek at the floppy drives. I'll have to grab an Apple II so we can take a deeper dive and see if they work. So standard Apple II floppy drive connection. And this drive is a Distar or Distar. Yeah, drive 1. I like the little arrow there to show you how to close the drive. No disk or anything in there. And as you can notice, this is a half-height drive. On the back side, we have a few stickers. 5¼ inch floppy drive, well, floppy direct drive. Model number LDD103SSA. And there it is, Distar or Distar. They were on 2290 Ringwood Avenue, Unit F, San Jose, California, 95131. And their old telephone number, 408-943-1599. Can't say I've ever heard of this company, but they made a clone floppy drive for the Apple II. Now, back in the day on my Apple IIc, I had an external floppy drive for it, besides the internal one, but the external drive was a clone drive as well. And it wasn't one like this, but it was half height, but it had a slightly larger case, maybe plastic. I can't remember if it was metal or plastic. And instead of having a ribbon cable, it had a round cable with the DB9 connector that the Apple IIc uses for external floppy drive. But I remember that drive just being a lot less expensive than the real deal, which is why I had it. And when I upgraded to my Apple II GS, I ended up getting an Apple 3½ inch floppy drive, but then I plugged that clone drive into the back of the 3½ inch drive. I daisy chained it, and it worked for my 2GS as well. So I never had an official Apple 5¼ inch floppy drive back in the day. I was always rocking a clone drive. I have no idea the brand name of that clone drive, so I've never really tried to look for another one that is similar. But I'm pretty sure this drive here, which is a Mitec, I have one of these, but I think the Mitec that I have is the version for the Apple IIc, so it actually has the DB19 on it as opposed to the ribbon cable that would work on the regular Apple II. Now, it's my recollection that this Mitec drive, which feels a little gummy, you can see there that the spring action doesn't work super well. This thing has a track 0 sensor, but on the back side, we have a few stickers, FCC, AD3C, serial number, made in Taiwan. Now notice the hole where this is coming out is the perfect size for one of those grommets and a regular round cable that would go to a DIN connector on the Apple IIc version. Yes, here it is. Here's my other Mitec drive. So this is the one that has the connector for the Apple IIc or 2GS or Apple IIe really. And it is not gummed up, so it is springy. And the model number is AD3C. Was that the same as this one? Yes, it is. Same exact model number as this drive, even though it has this cable instead of the ribbon cable. I have a soft spot in my heart for these clone drives, mainly because it just reduced the barrier of entry of getting a floppy drive for your Apple II quite significantly. The badge just fell off. I want to try to clean this out a little bit, see if we can fix the gumminess of it. And I don't know who makes the mechanism in this drive, but Mitec seemed to design the controller board. So this is the analog board on the top that does the reading of the data and converts that to the digital signal. But this board, which seems to control also the stepper motor for the head, and I guess goes up to that top board up here. This is the head amplification that turns that into a digital signal, goes down to the board. That is all designed by Mitec. So it has Mitec right there and on the top side. So this motor, licensed by Japan Servo Company, to Servo China Corp, Taiwan, Republic of China. But one thing you can notice on the top side, there's that track 0 sensor that I mentioned. And that little notch thing there goes into the sensor, and that prevents this thing from head banging. So when you turn on an Apple II, it tries to move the head back to the track 0 position, and because there is no sensor that has a signal that goes back to the computer through the ribbon cable, the computer doesn't know when the head is at track 0. So it just tries like 35 times. So if the heads are over here at track 35, it just goes all the way back to 0. It doesn't really head bang. But if it's at track 2, it tries 35 times and it head bangs. Well, this particular drive senses that it's at track 0 and it just will not try any further. So you don't get head bangs with this drive. And I love that. And that's really an unusual thing on Apple II drives. So one thing that's interesting is this thing doesn't feel gummed up anymore. Like you saw that it wasn't returning, that wasn't springing back. But now it's fine. I'm still going to put a little bit of lubricant right here on this part of the mechanism. Okay, I have some of this bearing oil. Don't remember what brand this is, but there's a little shaft right here. But there's a little shaft. We'll just put a drop there. We'll put a drop there. Oh wow, that made a huge difference already. That moves nice and free. And as for the head moving back and forth, I need to see if there's any bushings. I don't think this has a bushing. I think it's just riding on these little rails here. I don't think they were ever greased either, so that's probably fine. But take a look at the head. It's got quite a bit of dirt on there. Needs definitely a little bit of TLC. Got a cotton bud here with some IPA on it. And let's just give that a good clean and then flip it around and use the dry side just to clean that off. And now take a look at it. Much better. All right, so I have an Apple IIc we're going to be testing this drive with, and I'm going to use the adapter from my floppy EMU to connect this floppy drive to the Apple IIc second port. You can't boot from it, but I can still test the drive with it. So that just adapts it to the 19 pin that the Apple IIc uses. For testing this drive, I'm going to be using Locksmith. Now, I just made this disk, hence the lack of label, but this is a great utility that I always use for testing disks. Let's just make sure the computer actually boots. I won't plug this in. Yeah, okay, I needed to test to make sure this disk is good, because obviously it's not. I'll make another one. Okay, there we go. This copy worked. We're on 6.1 Revision A, and I'm using a grease weasel to write this disk. That way I can just make them quickly and easily from a modern computer. So I'll just plug in the external drive. Okay, here we go. Hopefully no smoke gets let out. Okay, sounds fine. So I'm going to use U for utilities, and we're going to do 16 sector fast verify. So first we'll do it on the main drive, on disk drive 1. This is the internal drive, and you heard it do a head bang there. This should all have periods. Perfect. So we'll do utilities, fast verify, but we're going to do drive 2 this time, and I'll move this disk into the other drive. Since we know it's a good disk, here we go. Aha. Well, the light's on, but I think what might be happening, it didn't even spin. I think what's happening is this adapter I'm using doesn't actually pass the 12 volts through to the disk drive, because this is really designed for the floppy EMU. So I don't think I can use this. I'll have to switch to a different Apple II, one that has a regular disk drive controller. It's not that I was trying to avoid using a regular Apple II, it's just that it's unwieldy on the bench. And I'd rather use the IIc, it's just so much smaller. Let's see if I have a disk controller in here. I do, but it's the wrong type. This is the type that needs the 19-pin connector externally, so I'll plug this into slot number 5. I found a 16-sector disk 2 card, an original one actually, and I have the floppy drive plugged into it. Yep, here's that Locksmith disk. Stick it in the drive, and it'll now be the drive 1, the boot drive. Let's move the head into a random position there, where it would normally head bang as soon as I turn on the computer. And here we go, let's turn it on. No head bang, I love it. All right, so we boot it right up. Let's go to utilities and do verify. And drive 1, hit space to continue. Yeah, that totally works. Perfect. So that's really cool. So this is a working drive after a little bit of lubrication. Well, I didn't even lubricate the head slider, just clean the heads. It might have worked anyways, but yeah, that's awesome. And I love the fact it doesn't headbang. I'm not sure how many other Apple II disk drives don't headbang, but these Mitec drives definitely do not. So the Mitec badge came off the drive, so I'm going to use some rubber cement to reattach it. And the trick about using rubber cement is you have to apply it to both surfaces and let it dry first for a while. And then when you touch the surfaces together, it totally glues. And I guess it's not really rubber cement, it's more like contact cement, I think is the right name for it. So you just put a thin layer on and let that dry for a little while before you try to touch the surfaces together. There it is. The Mitec drive has the badge reaffixed, and I even attached 2 extra feet. So now it has a full complement of feet. Drive looks really good, just as good as the other one I have. It's just it's a little bit more useful if I'm using it with a 2E, 2 Plus, or an original 2, because I could hook 2 of these drives up using the ribbon cable. So let's move on to the Distar, the Distar drive. Let's see if this thing works. So if you're ever plugging in these types of drives to an Apple II with one of these disk controllers that has the pin header, I really recommend you take the card out first. That way you make sure you line up pin 1 and all the pins perfectly, because look, I just accidentally got that wrong. You gotta make sure you have it right, otherwise you can damage the disk drive. All right, so let's turn on the computer first. Okay, it's spinning. Let's use a cleaning floppy. Just run this through. Since the other drive was a bit dirty, there's nothing to say that this one also wouldn't have dirty heads. So just let that sort of do its thing here for a second. I'd say that's good enough. All right, Open Apple Control reset. I don't think this thing necessarily headbangs, but maybe. Let's see if we get this to boot. Power cycle the computer. That would be negatory. So what I'm going to do, because I know this Mitec works, I'm going to connect that back up to drive 1, and I'll boot the Locksmith disk on the Mitec, and then we can run the other drive through its paces a little bit. Oh, really? This disk no longer boots? And of course, this is in the Mitec drive, and we know this worked. Did this disk get erased in the other drive? Is that what the other drive did to this disk? It's kind of a good idea to not use your precious disks in unknown disk drives, because you never know what it might do, like erase it. Now, while I make a new copy of Locksmith, there we go, I just did that. I've had clone disk drives that if the disk was in there and clamped, and you turned off the computer while the disk was clamped, it would erase what was underneath the head. The disk wasn't spinning, so it would just erase like one sector. But that was enough to, well, unfortunately ruin a bunch of disks. And I think, if I recall, even if it was write protected, it would do that. Let's see if this thing can boot with a fresh copy of Locksmith. Because no. So, okay, so that's interesting. I wonder if the problem is just having the other drive plugged in is enough to ruin the Mitec drive or make it not work. Yes. How weird is that? So the other drive is unplugged here. I pulled the cable off. There it is, unplugged. Seems that while it's plugged in, it keeps the entire disk drive subsystem from working. Now with these 2 cables, everything's in parallel except for like a drive select signal, and everything else is completely in parallel. So it's quite possible that the other drive is doing something bad to the signals and it's affecting both of them. And yeah, not booting. And let's unplug the second disk drive again. There it is. Okay, well that tells us the Distar is bad, and this is a fault I've never run into. I've never had that on an Apple II where a second disk drive caused even the first disk drive to not work. So there's no point for me opening this up and like cleaning the heads, because it's definitely not that. There's an electronics problem inside that disk drive. All right, so I'm just going to label the Distar faulty, causes both drives to not work. Okay, well that's it for the hardware. Let's take a look at the floppies and things that we got here. Oh, it looks like we got some high density IBM PC disks, brand new. Let's see if there's any kind of mold or anything on these. The way you would check that is just take the disk in your fingers and rotate it. Just look through the little opening, make sure there's no splotches or anything else that is obvious. The mold is obvious if it's on there, and I don't see anything. Cool. So if this disc doesn't have it, then almost certainly none of these other ones do. So that's cool. Now for me personally, whenever I get discs, and could be that these are more as well, blank discs, is I don't trust these until I have already put them through a full format over in my PC over there. I have a machine that has all the different types of drives in it. So I have a high density disk drive in there. I will attempt to format every single one of these, and if any of them have any bad sectors, then I toss it out. Unfortunately, I found a lot of these later high-density discs are quite unreliable. Not to say that these are going to be bad or not, but I'm just saying that I found 1.44 meg and 1.2 meg discs are generally pretty unreliable. 360K discs, on the other hand, seem to work better, at least in my experience, as long as they're not moldy or whatnot. And I think maybe that has something to do with the fact that they were just very expensive. Floppies were super expensive early on, but as time went on, they got cheaper and cheaper. Corners were cut in the manufacturing, I'm assuming, and that caused them to become less reliable. Of course, the other thing is that the media that's in high density discs, which are both of these, it's higher density as a different formulation, so that could be part of it as well. But I remember when floppies were very expensive early on, and they were pretty reliable. I mean, they still went bad too, but they were pretty reliable. And 8-inch discs are like the ultimate in reliability. Now, this was the other 3.5-inch box, and it looks like there's an ad for 3M circular polarizing computer filters. I think the idea was to cut down on the glare, since that's what like polarized sunglasses do. It would stop some of the bouncing glare. Don't really know how well they worked on CRTs, only because they had a tendency to really dim the screen as well, and then you had to turn the contrast way up, or the picture level, and then that would wear out your CRT much quicker. But that's kind of cool. And yep, these are definitely brand new, high density 3M discs. And 3M used to wrap them up in this little plastic sleeve here. I'll take that off. And we have 10 discs along with some labels. Enhanced performance diskettes. And again, I'll put the 3.5-inch in my need to format or need to test pile. And it's mainly because I like to have a bunch of discs that I've already formatted I know are good, because I really hate when I'm trying to make a disc and I'm grabbing a floppy disk, like for instance when I was making the Locksmith disc, and it's bad. Because you might have a whole box. I mean, it could be this whole box is bad. So you put one in, bad. Put another one in, bad. I like to know that when I'm not trying to make a disc, say for a video. So that's why I sort of spend the effort to kind of go through all these new discs. Now, I do it while I multitask, not making a video, but other kind of multitasking. I will just turn that thing on and there's an auditory cue. If the disc is bad, it makes a different tone, and then the disc just comes out of the drive and I throw it away. Now we have another box of discs here. These are double densities, and it'd be cool if these are new, because double density, oh, they are. This one unfortunately has a little bit of a dent, so I think that one is, yeah, that is not gonna work. So I'm gonna toss that one out, but look at these, freaking awesome. Oh, that one's sticky. The nice thing about these is a lot of times I'll take a 1.44 megabyte disk and just put tape over the extra hole and use it as a double density disk. That's not always ideal, and some drives don't like that. So it's really nice to have actual double density disks like this. And machines like the Commodore Amiga, Atari ST, some old laptops, and of course the early Macintoshes all use these kinds of disks. So I like having these, and they will definitely be tested as well. Now, I'm definitely very lucky that over the years I've sort of been accumulating floppy disks, and I've done rescues like with tons and tons of disks and computers, and I'll set all the disks aside. And if they don't have anything that's interesting in them, like personal files, I'll format them all, and I will figure out which ones are good and which ones are bad. And I've ended up with tons and tons of disks that I certify myself and work well. And it's always good to have more, but I'm kind of probably at the limit where I think I have enough for a lifetime, my lifetime at least, when it comes to floppy disks. Okay, so this is that newsletter that was in the photo envelope. Let's see what this is all about. And if this is something that's interesting and obscure, this will definitely get scanned. Newsletter of the Apple Core Examiners, January 1984. Next meeting is on the 14th of January 1984 at 10 a.m. in the new Inacomp classroom. I'm not sure what Inacomp means. Many people have been receiving a copy of the newsletter and attending all the meetings without keeping up on their dues. We have to adopt a new policy with the new year. It's costing the club $6 or $7 per month to send newsletters to all of the people in the old mailing list. Dues are now to be paid by the end of January for 1984. Dues not paid will mean you do not desire to become or remain a member. We are doing this to protect those members who do pay. After all, we do have a nice club library and many nice programs available for checkout. I've come up with a semi-beautiful ID card for all members as they pay for 1984. A member will have to show his ID card, to store employees to gain access to the club library. Now, what's interesting is this was January 1984, and this is clearly printed on a computer. But January 1984? Was this done like on a Apple Lisa, maybe? I love this. While we're on the subject, I would like to ask if anyone out there has seen the club's main library notebook. I have no idea where it is. If you do have it, or you know where it is, please contact Doug. In case you don't know, the club library is not supposed to leave the building. All right, so shop list 3.1, load shop list, change line 70 as follows. So this looks like Applesoft Basic, and I guess there was a errata of some type. And we have recipe file, change just one category. Nice clip art there. The Apple end user hotline, 312 area code. Is that Chicago? Yep, I just looked it up. That is Chicago. So 213 was Los Angeles, 312 Chicago, and 212 was New York City. These are the quickest and easiest to dial area codes when using a rotary phone. So they were desirable to have the low numbers. Coming attraction at the next meeting will be a demonstration of the new Gibson LPS2 light pen package recently put on the market. I have not had time to work with it as much as I would like, but it is simple enough that I should be able to fake my way through it. I must warn you, it is dangerous to watch any Gibson light pen demonstration. The danger is you will want to own one. The problem is it runs $350 in 1984. Ouch. It's like watching a mini Apple/Lisa computer at work. There are many tricks yet to be discovered about using the software. Believe me. Now think about $350, think about it. I think by 1984, January, I'm pretty sure the Commodore 64 was about that price, or it was about to be that price. So that's a lot just for a light pen. Now, one thing that is interesting is that I actually had a light pen on my Apple II Plus, well, it was the family's II Plus back in the day. And I don't remember the brand or anything. I don't know if it was that card, but it was something that, I don't even know how we came across that, to be honest. But it was a card that went inside the Apple II Plus. It was in a black plastic shell, and then a cord came out the back, and then that was the light pen. And we had a monochrome screen to use with it. And I remember playing around with it and thinking it was really neat, but then realizing it was kind of useless because there wasn't really any software to use with it. There was some demonstration stuff that came with it, and that was cool. There would be like a square thing, and you touch that with the light pen, you could drag it around, draw on, stuff like that. I feel like light pens are good, useful tools, although they're not very ergonomic because you're holding your hand up like against the screen, and it gets very tiring very quickly. And I think the reality was on the Apple II, there just was no software that used it. Maybe you were just supposed to design your own custom software to use with it. But I know that the demo software that came with it was sort of fun for a little while, and then I was also not a good programmer, so I couldn't really write my own software, and so I don't really know what happened to that light pen. I don't really know where we got it from, but I just remember thinking it was really cool because it was so futuristic seeming. This would have been probably around 1983 that we got the light pen, so now it makes me think how expensive that actually might have been. Ouch. So that's it for page 1. Let's take a look at page 2. Now, there was someone's name here, and I just used a Sharpie to erase it. So we have a little program. It's interesting, it doesn't start at line 10. Is it missing something? Either way, it's something for the Apple II, definitely. Give me a try. If anyone recognizes what this is or wants to type it in on their Apple II and give it a try, so you can hit pause and type this in. I'll be curious to know what that does. Some kind of pattern on screen, obviously. We have a correction from last month. If you typed in last month's screen reverse program from newsletter, I bet you are still trying to get it to work. Obviously, someone sneaked in while the typing was being done and purposely entered poke 233,0 instead of poke 233,3 in line 40. I discovered it when I couldn't get it to work myself. Make the correction and it will function perfectly. You also may want to experiment with it for more beautiful and useful effects. It's true. Garbage in, garbage out. Oscar the Grouch. And then we have this little program here. I'll keep my fingers out of it in case someone wants to type it. But it looks like there's some data statements. So the for loop pokes that into memory. And then the call statement here will start that program. Couldn't tell you what this does, but it must do something and then returns because there's a little bit of a delay right here. And then it just restarts over and over again. So if you've typed in either of these programs here, comment down below. I'll be very curious to know what they do. So check this out. The postmark, Saginaw, Michigan. 5th of January, 1984. United Way. Yeah, give to the United Way. That's certainly different than these days. 20 cents is all it used to cost to mail something in the US. That's kind of amazing. So it looks like Ron Laughlin was handling the newsletter, or at least mailing these out from Bay City, Michigan. And that's it. That's the entire newsletter. I have to wonder if there was more to it, but probably not. This seems to fold up perfectly. This obviously is the way it was mailed. It was just a very short little newsletter with a couple programs. And this was really indicative of what was going on in the early 80s. These groups were all over the place, and they would meet up probably monthly, and the newsletter would go out with little programs and stuff, and people would exchange and share programs and ideas and hardware demos, like the light pen thing that was being talked about. Computers were wondrous and new, and people really wanted to get together and share and talk about it. I mean, to be honest, it's not that different than what we do nowadays. It's just that we're talking about retro computers, watching YouTube videos, but here in Portland and in cities all across the world, people are getting together monthly, quarterly, or for VCF big festivals, doing exactly the same thing we were doing then, showing off cool stuff, just experiencing these old computers. It's just that now computers are so commoditized with our phones and modern computers that everyone's got them. No one would think about getting together to talk about computers anymore. I mean, I suppose LAN parties, but even that's kind of an outdated thing that is retro if you think about it. So it is funny to me that there are parallels between what was happening in 1984 and today when it comes to these old computers. Kansas Fest, Apple II stuff. It's just how interesting with like come full circle. Anyways. What's left are books. So let's just take a quick look at the books that are in here. I'm not going to kind of go through them like we did with the newsletter. We have Apple II Assembly Language by Marvin L. DeJong. Looks like we have an Apple II motherboard there, an Apple II keyboard. I don't quite recognize what that is. This book seems to have been published by Blacksburg Continued Education Series, edited by Larson, Titus, and Titus. This book teaches assembly language programming at the beginning level. No prior knowledge of 6502 assembly is needed. Directs you in hands-on computer exercises and experiments with both software and hardware, and enables you to interface the Apple II to outside devices like an AD or DA converters, timers, etc. Provides interfacing circuits and programs that can be used with the Apple II without modification, and enhances your power as a programmer, and then gives you a more general understanding of how microcomputers work than can be established by programming in BASIC and other high-level languages. The back makes this seem really appealing, and it's very fascinating to me that this book, which isn't even that big, right, teaches you how to program the Apple II at a low level, 6502 assembly, but goes beyond there and tells you how to, oh yeah, look, little programs and stuff. It goes beyond that and tells you how to hook stuff up to your computer, like electronics-wise, digital to analog converters and vice versa. And look, there's like circuit stuff in here. This is just amazing. I know I've sort of talked about this a bunch of times before, but if you think about like the way Apple is now, even with the Macintosh line, it was like, no, you're not doing stuff like this with the Macintosh. Things changed so dramatically from the Apple II in the 70s and the early 80s to the Macintosh, and then every computer nowadays. Like, no one would think about designing hardware for a modern computer. I mean, of course, I'm sure someone out there is doing it, but there weren't just like books you could pick up at your bookstore to tell you how to program your computer at a low level and then design hardware to interface to it. And this was part of the wonder that these groups, these user groups, were all about, is people would read this, make something cool, show it off to their friends, write some cool software, distribute that, and we get distributed to all the members. That's just so cool, and very similar to like the homebrew stuff that's happening today. It's just we share stuff on GitHub, and we have open source hardware, open source software that enhances these old computers. So it's like, just like was talked about in this book. It's just, anyone could do this. Yeah, so cool. All right, anyways, I gotta go faster here. Apple Color Manual. I happen to have both of these monitors actually. Oh, look, it's got the warranty card in there too. There's not going to be much useful information in this book. Apple never published really schematics for either of these monitors, but internally these things really are the same. They look different, but they are internally the same. So it's a composite color monitor, and has a monochrome high resolution mode, has a pretty high resolution CRT as well. This one just has the Snow White design theme. That one just looks like the Apple IIe, obviously, and designed to fit on top of the Duo disc. Yeah, the fact that the manual is the same just sort of belies the fact that internally the monitors are the same. I think this is kind of fascinating, actually. The North American one definitely only could do NTSC 60, as far as I'm aware. But I do happen to know that they had versions of these monitors sold in other markets, Australia specifically, that were NTSC 50. So it's still NTSC and artifact color, but it running at 50 hertz. But they actually made a PAL version as well. Very interesting. And it's funny, I said it was a high resolution, but it's a 0.52 millimeter slot pitch. Remember, 0.28 was kind of high res VGA monitors. So I guess it wasn't that high res. All right, and then we have French, and then looks like we have German. Okay, so this is like a multilingual manual. So I guess this was the one that they gave out with these monitors in all regions. Looks like we have Italian, and then it looks like we have Spanish. Next up, about your enhanced Apple IIe user guide. So my assumption is this was probably an addendum to just the regular owner's manual. Probably talked about the specific enhancements you got when you upgraded the ROM and the processor, like mouse text, which if you're not super familiar, it's just some additional characters you had access to. And this was used with productivity applications like AppleWorks and whatnot, like a text mode mouse cursor and a running man, along with some gradations and, you know, arrows and stuff. This was generally used for drawing user interfaces in text mode. And they gave you a little example of how to use those. That's cool. How to tell if you have an enhanced IIe. If you have this book, you probably have an enhanced IIe, but you can make sure by checking the opening display or lifting the lid and looking inside. Yeah, so if it's //E versus like the brackets, enhanced ROM. That's how it looks when you don't have an enhanced ROM on an Apple IIe, or you can lift the lid and look for the 65C02 processor with that part number, updated character ROM that gives you the mouse text, and then you have the new ROMs, the main ROMs for the system. And here's the manual for the Apple IIe. Interesting that they chose to have the caps lock in the down position. That's just kind of curious, just an observation. Ooh, it's printed in color too. That's actually kind of fancy and kind of expensive. So that's what the Apple IIe box looked like. Can you imagine buying a computer today and having like a page in the manual that's like, that is the RAM, that is the speaker, there's the CPU. Like, it's just kind of hard to imagine, right? Like, to open your Apple IIe, you just like pop the lid off. It's like they wanted you to go inside. It's just fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And the manual is very clear, it's very concise, it's very well written, very typical of Apple by the time the Apple IIe came out. Numeric keypad, I've shown that on the channel. There's actually a connector inside the Apple IIe for that. We've got paddles, joystick, cassette interface or cassette player. There's the Apple III monitor, which at the time was the only monitor that Apple had on offer. That was it. So a lot of people bought that, but then a lot of people bought other monitors as well. It was not long after this manual, I guess, Apple came out with their own Apple IIe monitor, one that has the tilting CRT. And then we have the original Apple II disk drive. Awesome manual. I don't know if I've actually seen the Apple IIe manual. Apple II User's Guide for the II Plus and the IIe. I've definitely had this book. I kind of recall that it's just a little bit more in-depth about programming and stuff like that, how the disks work, a bit more about how the system works, plus example typing programs. Because you saw in the IIe manuals, it was pretty lacking when it came to example programs like music and sound and stuff like that. So yeah, this is kind of useful. This was in the book. This seems to be some registration card for something from Central Point Software. And if you notice, Capitol Highway, Portland, Oregon, 97219. Yep, they were based here in Portland. They moved around to a few different offices, but they were all here in Portland. So this was their software they had at the time. Copy to PC, PC Tools, Option Board, Copy to Mac, Copy to Plus, which is probably what they were using. That was the Apple II copy program, and this was the one for the Commodore 64. Actually, this is not a registration card. This seems to be something you can order the software. So you can see what the pricing was at the time this was sent out. Everything was about 39 bucks. The Option Board, if I recall, what did that let you do? I think that let you copy Mac software on a PC or Apple software on a PC, something like that. And you could order the various pieces of software here. Please send the following. Okay, yep, so you would fill this out. So you check what you wanted, fill it out. You just write your credit card number right on here. Right. Yep, that was the 80s. You just write it on there, or you mail it in, or you could call so you could read them the credit card number over the phone. That was probably the safer thing to do. All right, so this is the next book. I think this was the Apple book that came with the Apple II Plus, if I recall. Is this an actual Apple product? Yes, this is an Apple product. 1978, 1981. Floating point basic, a little quick reference card. Yep, this was the way the manuals looked on the older Apple IIs. You can tell that things got really slick with the Apple IIe. They really raised their game from the way this manual looks. This is like typeset on, I don't know what, like a PDP 11 or something like that. It's much more basic, a little less fancy. There's no cute pictures. It's not in color. It is easy to flip through though, because the way the pages are cut, you can get right to these green sections. That's actually kind of nifty. Next up is Beneath Apple DOS. Updated for the 2E by Quality Software by Don Worth and Peter Lechner. So this is from 1981. My assumption is this tells you a little bit more about programming the DOS, the disk operating system. So yeah, like low-level functions, things like that. And we also have a quick reference card, DOS 3.3. Yep, this came from Reseda, California, 213 area code. That's where Quality Software was. Direct use of the disk drive, write translation tables, disk layout stuff, directory catalog sectors. Pretty cool. All right, next up is the manual for that Distar or Distar drive that's causing the whole computer not work when we plug that in. It's a high-quality mini floppy subsystem which is designed for operation with the Apple II. Compared with conventional subsystems, this unit has a very low profile, a half of height. Also, heat radiation is considered effectively for continuous operation. Okay. I think there's really not much to the manual. Just tells you how to plug it in and probably is going to warn you not to mess up the connection. How to insert and take out diskettes. How to connect additional drives. Caution, as drive is a precise machine, please avoid operation or storage when shock or vibration is expected. It's very dangerous to use the unit while water, any liquid, or metal is inside the case. Please handle carefully so that the foreign substances do not get in. Not really much to it. Plug it in and use it. Look at, okay, next up is a Apple II reference manual for the original Apple II. 1979 and 1981 Apple computer, 10260 Bradley Drive, Cupertino, California, 95014. It is for the Apple II and Apple II Plus personal computer, because of course those machines were the same, other than that they're essentially the same thing, just a ROM upgrade on the 2 Plus. System monitor, page 49, Apple II reference manual, load integer basic, type int, then call this mini assembler, okay. So check it out, Apple published in this book the entire disassembled auto start ROM list. This is easy to get now, we could just disassemble the ROM, but here it actually is. It's just all spelled out for you to look at and do whatever you need to do, I guess. I don't want to harp on it, but this mindset that's going on here, which is not unusual, that all the companies were doing stuff like this. It's just so far from what we have now. We have to fight tooth and nail for right to repair, and this is just telling you how to do it yourself. By the way, this little note was written on this page, expense material requisition. Sounds so businessy. Don't forget to file your TPS report. Okay, Apple Dot Matrix printer. This was before the image writer. That was the printer, and this was just a rebadge of another one. I can't remember who made it, but this appears to be a piece of software because I think there's a disk. Yeah, there's actually a disk in here. The Apple Dot Matrix demo diskette. I know positively this stuff is all archived. Oh, this disk is not in great shape. Besides the label, look at this. That's not good. Yeah, the glue kind of breaks down on this. This could be cleaned. That's not detrimental. You don't need this for the drive or the disk to work. So this is pretty funny. So the Dot Matrix Operator's Guide was produced by Daryl L. Sink and Associates for Apple computers. So Apple didn't even make this manual, which is why the typesetting and styling looks nothing like the other ones. Interesting. I'm pretty sure the image writer used that exact same ribbon. And in the back, we have a quick reference, Dot Matrix reference card. Next up, Understanding Apple Graphics, $2.99 in USA. That Apple II just looks very strange, but it's obviously a painting or something. Richard Petticord, a color bar test pattern, kaleidoscope, random lines. It's odd that they would publish something like a little book like this in this weird form factor. How to make a kaleidoscope. Low resolution lines. Yeah, cool. I mean, little programs, basic programs for drawing stuff in BASIC. That's pretty cool. The AppleSoft BASIC didn't really give you a lot of capabilities for drawing circles or anything like that. So you had to do that stuff yourself. So creating shapes would have to use little subroutines and whatnot that were in a book like this. Looks like we had a bunch of other handy guides for things like how to buy a personal computer, how to buy a portable computer, word processor, Atari, Commodore, IBM PC, VisiCalc, SuperCalc, understanding APL, AppleSoft Basic or Apple Basic, Apple Graphics, artificial intelligence. So ahead of its time. Talking about AI back in whatever year this was put out. 1983. Talk about ahead of their time. They were predicting AI. No, just kidding. All right, we have one last book. Apple II assembly language exercises. So Leo J. Scanlon wrote this. Ooh, this is like more like a textbook. Really trying to teach you how this stuff all works. Does this have anything on it, or is this I think this is a bookmark. Yeah, just a blank paper for a bookmark. So someone got up to code conversion for output, chapter 12, before they took a break and maybe never went back. I don't know. ASCII character set for the Apple II. By the time you complete your Apple II assembly language exercises, you'll have built a library of assembly language programs and subroutines and the expertise to use them to design your own programs. Published by John Wiley & Sons, 605 3rd Avenue, New York, New York, 10158. And that was the last book that came from Rain. All right, so I'm asking my viewers, is there anything you've seen me look at here that has not been archived? If so, please let me know and we can get this stuff scanned. I'm going to scan this newsletter. I highly doubt this is archived. It'll go onto archive.org. Clearly stuff like this has already definitely been archived, and I would assume that pretty much every single book that we've seen here has been scanned already. But just in case there's one that hasn't, again, comment down below, let me know so that we can get that scanned. I'm just sort of looking through here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure everything here will have been scanned. I'm definitely all about the preservation of these books because, you know, to be honest, part of me, when I get a little bit older and maybe I'm not rushed to make videos all the time, I really would like to learn assembly language, and it would be fun to kind of go through these books and maybe learn how to do it on the Apple II. Obviously, I have a plethora of 8-bit machines that are all 6502 based, so I could learn it on the Commodore 64 as well. And to be honest, I think the assemblers available on the Commodore 64 are a lot better than the ones for the Apple II. Although, nowadays we would just do it on modern computer with the modern keyboard and editor and whatnot, and then you would use an emulator to test your programs that you're writing. But if you're doing bare metal assembly, definitely the stuff on the Commodore 64 for 6502, I think is by far the best versus the stuff that was available for like the Apple II, for instance. All right, I think that's going to be it for this video. I have more stuff down here on the floor that I could get to, but I think that will just make this too long, and already I know it's a joke when I say mini mail call, and it's a maxi mail call. Thank you very much, Rain, for sending in this Apple II stuff. It's very cool. There will definitely be a repair on that floppy drive that's bad. I'm pointing to it as sitting right there on a box. I will definitely get to that because I want to get that thing fixed. I love the clone disk drives. I have a little selection of them, and these will just go into my collection of Apple II clone stuff because Apple clone stuff is awesome. There was so much of it, and a lot of it's not really documented well. So it'll be really cool to really dig into that disk drive. And if you had one of those clone disk drives or the Mitec, definitely let me know in the comment section. I'll be curious to hear your experiences with those drives. But that Distar, however you say it, run of the mill, right? But it'd be interesting to see how that works inside and see if we can get it fixed. Clearly there's no documentation, or, well, we have the manual for it, but there's no schematic for it. But we should be able to figure it out. It's a disk drive. It's an Apple II disk drive. It's not that complicated. So there we go. If you liked this video, thumbs up. If you didn't, you know what to do. Huge thanks to my supporters. Names going to the side of the screen. You know, all the usual YouTube junk, blah, blah, blah. Subscribe, like, all that stuff. And that's going to be that. So stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.